wrong. You know that. Right?
Oh, it's, yes, that is wrong. I don't look at that.
Yeah,
It's like 6 minutes off.
I swear, he's just for the public.
So then that's ours, the recording back on now.
We are, and we're on YouTube.
Okay,
Actually, I gotta start recording.
all right, well, we can just wait until 6:30 on it.
Minutes.
Yeah, that's like 6:27, so it's just a big.
So here's the. Where's the grant station? This, that's called a sheet. I think one of the things that came up when I was talking.
So did you spend a week in Disney World?
Absolutely.
No, and I came back and I'm like, oh, I heard he was at Disney World. No,
Well, that's what somebody told me. What?
Oh,
You were in
yes.
Orlando, weren't you?
No.
So.
See, I thought you were Orlando, so 2 and 2 6, right? So someone told me you were at Disney World.
Which ones?
Yeah, okay. No, some never been to Disney World.
Should know better.
How can that be?
Every time I look at it, it looks very expensive and very confusing.
It is both.
So I guess just one of the.
There was an article in the New York Times to see
This is
about
not
how what's happening at Disney is like the massive decline in the plastic tax that's used to be.
Exactly.
You just get one ticket, there's one price. There's like platinum level of this.
Yeah, you have to pay to get in line early. Yes, it's all true. My daughter and my husband went every year for 20 years.
Yeah.
The Melanosi's go like 5 times a year. So if you really like it, you go a lot. I hate it. I went along a couple times. And then that's fun to by
I
themselves.
went.
But,
Never been.
Really?
No.
I'm so surprised. I bet you haven't at least been.
Oh, yeah. And his, and the town administrator.
And it was like a 1980s, 1970s style. And that's where the first day, just ridiculous sunlight walking around.
This past week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
that's my nose.
And
is
then
still
here,
red, but it's
There
really
was
red.
another one here.
Oh, somebody told me. I tell you what's good is a Disney cruise. So we did that several times. That I liked because, you know, everybody did their own thing. And you know, your child was safe. But, no, there's some people who love it, just go, they know everything, they know how to get all passes.
Okay.
Easy peasy. I'm not sure we got it. He's not back yet? I like places to watch. His phone number? Not for me.
It's supposed to.
No, I don't.
They want
He neglected him in childhood because they didn't take him to Disney.
Now you're just leaving and I'm like,
You're getting one of them, you're getting a parent. With a kid in New Orleans.
My wife
Mentioning.
has not. But I want to. No. So we're trying to avoid this Hyatt garden stuff.
Have like a, I don't.
I lived in my. Off the top
We can always get back to you.
Yeah.
We can always get Carla.
Everyone. Hardly.
Trying to get all the national grid back.
And the carrier pigeon.
Yeah, it's a little.
True.
How do we really spell mission engineering?
CHG.
CHG. On the corner, it's TS. Oh, he's back now.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Hang on, you can start recording again.
So I'll. Take a couple of minutes.
He must.
All right, so back in open session, and the next item on our agenda is the poll petition for installation of new pole at 361 Turnpike Road. Can you read the
Sure.
notice?
Legal notice for the poll hearing, Town of Southborough. Southborough Select Board shall hold a public hearing Tuesday, April 28th, 2026, 6:30 PM. Public Safety Training Room at the Southborough Public Safety Building, 32 Porterville Road, Southborough, Mass. To consider a petition by Mass Electric Company, National Grid, to install a joint-owned pole on 361 Turnpike Road. Meeting may also be listened to or viewed by the public for a link located at ma-southborough.civicplus.com/64 virtual meetings.
All right, and we have our representative from National Grid. Can you please bring him over?
What does it show on the screen? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Supposed to, yeah. Yes,
Yes.
can hear you. Can hear you, but can't see.
Oh. Let me see.
There we
Okay.
go.
Hey,
Yeah, my name is John Rupia. I'm from National Grid at Hopedale Place. I'm here to petition for the poll call 443-1 for the new commercial building on 361 Turnpike Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, this is a new pole just to service the new Valvoline, and it's there because that's the more convenient.
Yeah, it's-
appropriate.
Right. It's a new commercial building, and they need power. And according to our calculations, they needed a pole, and we created this pole 43-1, which will be across the street.
Anyone have any questions?
No,
Okay.
we need commercial buildings.
Yep.
They need electricity.
Is there anyone in here who would like, members of the public who have any questions or comments on it? All right, so then I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor? I move that we approve the poll petition for the installation of the new pole at 361 Turnpike Road.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Rupia.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
All right, Linda, would you like to come up and?
Sure.
The next item on our agenda is an OPEB update from Linda Borneval from KMS Actuaries. So this is a follow-up from our meeting, I think it was the 31st. For that, where we got our annual report, and there was one change that we wanted to talk to that was basically where our OPEB position was not as worse than it was before due to, I think, the retiree health insurance program. So if you could just walk us through your slides and,
Okay,
okay.
thank you for having me.
By the way, thank you for coming in person.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I think it's a little easier when we're having a conversation rather than seeing me on a little TV screen. I mentioned it to Brian, I said I do prefer delivering some of this stuff in person. I think it's just a better way to communicate. So thanks for having me. Just by way of introduction, my name is Linda Borneval. I am the owner and chief actuary. I don't go by that title, but I'm the actuary that supports our whole group. We do a lot of OPEB work, particularly in Massachusetts, so we've got a lot of experience here. And brought some of the comparative info for you so you can see where you stand compared to some of the other communities. But what I wanted to do tonight is kind of step back a little bit from the disclosure reports. That's very like accountant-ease kind of stuff, a lot of accounting information on that, numbers. There aren't many numbers in this presentation, in case you didn't notice that. There's more words and kind of more conceptual things that I wanted to present to you so that we can kind of get a firm footing as to what OPEB is, how it does change over time, and then what you can do to kind of manage this thing that is kind of a little bit scary, right? Because it's big. So that's kind of like my opening thing. It's like, why are we here? Right? I know you had some questions and concerns from last time. And from the reports that you get every year, you're probably like, why do I need a 64-page report on all of this OPEB stuff? So, you know, if I can answer any of those questions, kind of provide context on where you are. Where is the town sitting right now in terms of OPEB? We'll look at some stats and on similar communities, as I mentioned, and then we can talk about some potential paths forward, because there's a zillion different options. And you'll get when we're through this why there are. All right. So what is OPEB? OPEB, the acronym actually is Other Post-Employment Benefits. And it's like, other than what? It's other than a typical pension plan. If any of you are not public sector employees, not them, right? A defined benefit
What's a
pension plan. Yeah, what's a pension plan? I'm in the private sector. What's a defined benefit pension plan, right?
They don't exist anymore.
It's generally most applicable to public employees. I mean, every public employee in Massachusetts is a member of a Massachusetts retirement system, whether they're a state employee, whether they're a teacher, or whether they're a member of the remaining 102 retirement systems in Massachusetts. With that comes a very nice pension benefit. They contribute a pretty large percentage, more than if you're all private sector. We know the 6.2 Social Security, right? They contribute either, there are a few 8%ers left, we call them, 9% of their pay, plus an additional 2% over 30,000. Some teachers actually contribute even more than that. So they're funding part of that benefit. By statute, that's required.
Can I stop asking that question? So.
No question's a
So
dumb
for the-
question. Didn't we learn that?
So wait,
Public employees receiving defined benefit pensions do not receive social security.
In Massachusetts, they do not.
So they
That-
don't pay FICA tax.
They do not.
They do not pay
get
Medicare. They
don't
only
pay
pay
Social Security.
Medicare.
Okay,
Right. So they're paying their 1.45. The town of Southborough is also funding that 1.45, just like on the private sector, right? Our employers pay the 6.2 and the 1.45 that the employee pays and that the town matches, if you will. There are many public employees in the country that are subject to Social Security. I live in New Hampshire. Our teachers and general employees are in Social Security. So their pension benefit in the New Hampshire retirement system is not as rich as it would be otherwise. The police and fire, ironically, are not in Social Security in New Hampshire. So they get a richer defined benefit because they don't have the Social Security leg of the, you know, the
Interesting,
retirement.
but they still do get a pension, even if they do participate in Social Security.
Correct. There's
Non-
many, I would say most of, and honestly, we work in Ohio. They also are not in Social Security. There's just a handful of states throughout the country that are not in Social Security. So that's one piece of any public employee who works here in Southborough. That's one of their pieces, right? They're going to get a pension benefit. I don't know how I segued off to that, but so in addition to that is a retiree medical benefit. So when I said, what does the word other mean? Other than pensions. It's the GASB defined pension benefit disclosures. And then when somebody thought, hey, OPEB is just like a pension benefit, we need another GASB standard. What are we going to call it? And they called it OPEB with the O meaning other. It really was other than pensions is it's like in quotes, right? Or in parentheses, other than pensions, post-employment benefits. Why is there such a thing as OPEB? It's because you know that the town can, you know, as part of their profit and loss statement, reports all the expense paid for their active employees. The employee provides you a service, you give him a few things like a salary, health insurance, all that kind of stuff. That's pretty straightforward for an active employee. For a retiree though, it's different. You're promising a benefit to an employee, right? You're asking them to provide a service, and maybe for a little bit lower pay, you're gonna make them a promise that you're gonna provide the pension and or the health insurance benefit at retirement. So the accountants perceive that as deferred compensation. And that deferred compensation has to be recognized while an employee is working. So if I work 40 years, 1/40th, this is really simplifying it, but 1/40th of my promised benefit at retirement would be recognized every single year between the date of hire, the date of retirement. So that's why we're here, because the GASB said all of these promises that are made represent a very large liability of something that might be paid way out into the future, right? Truly paid out in the future, but has a value today. And that's really why OPEB exists. And it's why there are unfunded liabilities on pensions as well, right? I might have only active employees in my pension plan, so my benefit payments could be zero because I have nobody I'm paying. But I'm going to fund that pension plan while my employees are working so that once they retire, I'll have a little nest egg to fund the payment of the benefit. Think about it like a 401k, right? I want $1 million. Now they're saying that's not enough, by the way, private sector people. Right? I need $1 million at retirement. So I really should start funding, when I'm young. And the earlier I start, the more I can accumulate compounding interest on hopefully positive gains. Hopefully it builds that nest egg that when you annuitize it and pay it over my lifetime, and that's where actuaries come in. It's like, what's the lifetime? That's the unknown, right? We now have the nest egg to fund that benefit. So that's sort of the purpose of why are we here? Why are we valuing these items? And that's really what we're coming down to is these promises, future payments discounted to the present. That's the liability.
But the reality is that we haven't been doing that.
Nobody has, because nobody until, get my math right here. I think in around 2006, the GASB kind of had a knocking on the door, head, whatever, light bulb went off that said, OPEB is another form of deferred compensation. We should start recognizing it. And that was the first GASB 45. That has been since replaced. It was a little wonky. It got replaced in 2018 or 17, 18 with GASB 75. And that one is the one that kind of killed everybody, which said, put that unfunded liability on your balance sheet. That's when pretty much every municipal balance sheet turned red because pension was already on there. That probably made them kind of reddish. But once OPEB, because it was not funded for all that time, there's trillions of dollars of unfunded liabilities in pensions at this point. In OPEB at this point. So that's where we are. So that's what OPEB is. Retiree health benefits paid over time, not necessarily pay as you go, but that could be a way of funding it. The costs are going to extend over many decades because as long as you exist, and I'm going to put my money down on that Southborough is going to exist, right? It's not going away. There isn't going to be some company shut down or someone that says we don't want to be in business anymore. You will be in business, I'm pretty sure. So as long as you offer have an employee that you've made the promise to, you're going to have OPEB. There's kind of no way to take it away. You and 99% of the communities in Massachusetts have adopted Chapter 32B, certain sections of it that provided this benefit, this retiree benefit. So that's why it's going to extend over many decades. You're going to be paying out over many decades. It's really, I'm going to call it forever. Right at this point, until somebody says, and this is always the argument, the government will take over. It's going to be Medicare for all, no matter how old you are, and the government, federal government will take care of our health insurance. Okay, so it includes current and future retirees. This promise, your retirees currently are getting this benefit. They're paying a portion of the premium. The town picks up the rest. So you're actively paying something right now, but you've also made the promise to the 22-year-old and the 42-year-old and the 62-year-old who still hasn't retired. they are, they're in our like calculation of these liabilities because it's a promise and we're still trying to figure out how to chop that up, over the 40 years to recognize that cost. All right. The important concept is that OPEB is not like one day when the GASB said, let's start recognizing this in 2018. You all came up with a number. I'm making this up because I can't picture your report right now in my head on, but let's just say $50 million was the number. That was in 2018. The next day it would have been a different number because the next day, a retiree could have died. And now our model's all messed up because he didn't live. Or the market conditions, if you had assets already set aside, or healthcare costs, you just got your premium renewal and it went up 12% instead of what we thought would be, 8. So that point of that is that every time we snapshot this thing, it's different because it's not a mortgage that you can say, I took out the mortgage day one of year one. And in 5 years from now, we all know what our balance is going to be if we didn't refinance. We absolutely know what that balance is. We paid our monthly payments. We had interest on that balance. We calculated 60 payments later. Voila, the balance is what it was. That is not OPEB. The next year, when I look at the snapshot, it's going to change your market. Your trust assets might change and they will. And the whole liability is going to change for reasons like listed, healthcare costs, demographics. You hired more people than you thought you'd hire. You added 5 positions, or you took away 5 positions, or as I was saying, 5 retirees died that we didn't think were. All right, so everything changes every time we look at this. And that's why it is a moving target. It's not even a dark with the center. It's a moving thing that kind of goes, surrounding time. So it's a long-term estimate that we're trying to make. And that's why we refresh every couple of years to recollect the information from Ryan and relook at the census and get new premium information, get all new stuff every time because it's not a fixed thing. It's always evolving. Okay.
Ours changed materially from at least at one previous.
Yes, and that was a plan. That was a renewal plan, and it hasn't been unlike that in many communities. That this year we saw a lot of flat over the past few years, especially on the Medicare supplemental plans. It was relatively flat increases. In my head, I was kind of thinking they were probably just modifying the actual plan of benefits to keep the premiums sort of, at bay. And then I think, there's a couple of things that came into play this past year that really increased those Medicare plans. So everybody is kind of in that same, an actuarial loss because we didn't expect that. And that's probably the biggest unknown for us always is to predict healthcare costs in the future, especially in the short term, that you think you had it nailed and then you get a renewal and there was all this other stuff that got built in that we really didn't. So again, putting OPEB in perspective, slide 4, it's long-term financial obligation. It's just like pensions. You've been funding the pension system since 1988, and we're not quite there yet on pensions. And again, that cost will evolve over time. It's not just a single target. So when I was talking with Brian and Mark, they kind of said, related to like a utility, like the water rates, right? That we come up with not me, you guys come up with some costs estimates maybe for the next 5 years. But then what's going to happen? Like we're going to look at the weather and it hasn't rained for, 6 straight weeks. We're in a drought, or, the usage change. It's kind of the same thing, right? That everything had to get readjusted for that. Same with OPEB. We've got to kind of relook at what actually happened in the past and reset to where we're going for the future. Okay. I already talked a little bit about OPEB and pension. Let's talk about it specifically in Massachusetts. There are many similarities where I'm a pension actuary. I'm actually not a healthcare actuary. I know a lot about healthcare right now because of OPEB, but my expertise has been in pensions because, what we do is we come up with a benefit and we project its possibility of being paid in the future. OPEB is
You
exactly.
know when each and every one of us is going to die.
Exactly. My husband says, what's an actuary? Ask Linda, she'll tell you when you're gonna die. That's the definition of an actuary. Not really. Right, so we have a pension benefit that we're trying to figure out when it's going to be paid into the future. I mean, we could come up with, you know, a $30,000 annual pension, but when I'm 66, if I retire at 65, if I'm 66, the probability of me getting that is not 100%. You know, after I'm starting collecting, the only thing that's going to happen is the probability that I'm going to die. And if I die, I will not be collecting the pension. Annuity type payment benefits like this, the longer people live, the more expensive they are. And, you know, opposite of the insurance company wants you to live forever, right? Otherwise they're paying out, right? Whereas an annuity program, we don't really want people living forever because it would kind of get a little too expensive to continually pay people. So that's that long-term benefit, you know, concept again. We're projecting benefits out into the future. OPEB pension, exactly the same. It's just a different benefit. One of them is a pension, the other one is a health benefit. And they're sensitive to assumptions. You know, if another actuary, they sort of talk about that with preparing a tax return, right? If 2 accountants or 5 prepare a tax return, you probably get a different answer from all 5. Actuaries are even worse because we have to make assumptions about the future, and we all have opinions, and we're all a pain in the you know what, because we all have strong opinions on things, on what those assumptions would be. So there'll always be some range of possibilities, right? So we have an investment return assumption we have to make. We have to make assumptions as to how long people are going to live, who's going to leave, who's going to stay, who will become disabled, so who's going to actually participate in this program once they retire. They might have a spouse who just retired from a nearby community that offers a better benefit. You will be happy about that because then they'll decline your benefit and elect over there. But the other thing can also happen too. Again, our private sector people who do not have this benefit, generally speaking, if you are a public sector employee and have a spouse, you will elect to have coverage for that person. All right. So those are all the differences, or the similarities between the two, but there are some very stark differences between pension and OPEB in the Commonwealth. All right. 1, pensions are governed by statute, Chapter 32. Health insurance governed by Chapter 32B, but it's not the funding of them. It's really just what you're able to offer or what you must offer your active employees as well as retirees. Pensions in Massachusetts, very structured funding requirements. They are right in the statute. This is how you do it. And there's some options on some flexibility, but basically, especially here, when you guys are a member of a regional retirement system, there's very little control you have over that unless you run for the board at Worcester Regional, right? So that way you have a vote on what a funding schedule might look like. Otherwise, you're part of a regional system and you pretty much don't have much, you know, capacity to modify those funding schedules.
Is 32B elective?
Yes, but I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know about its, you know, ability to cut back on some of those things once elected.
There's
There's
some
some
and Mr. Stiver says there's a bill in the House right now to allow towns to easily unelect 32B. So we'll get to it at the very end of it. So
Yeah, there's a couple communities out there that we're still doing like OPEB studies for. What if we added OPEB? But you know, the problem there is if you're the one lone community surrounded by all these people who offer a benefit, you know, you may lose people toward and when they're most valuable, right, toward the ends of their career, and you'll move them, and then you'll kind of still be stuck with possibly funding part of your benefit. So no mandated funding requirement on OPEB. It is it's local control. You get to choose how you would and I'm going to call, when I say funded, there's you're paying a portion of the benefit. That's kind of a given once you adopt 32B, right? If you got a 75-25 split, you're funding 75%. So that's funding. When I'm talking usually about funding, like pre-funding, funding something more than that, funding to your OPEB trust, there is no statute that requires OPEB pre-funding. You're paying pay as you go is the terminology. So you have greater control, right, over funding that way. And your decisions are going to drive where you're going to land in your whole funding model and your funded status. So similar in structure to pensions, but obviously OPEB does have more flexibility on what it is you're going to offer and how you're going to pay for it. So just slide 6, quickly, current approach and strategy. What is happened for a lot of years? We've been funding $250,000 annually to the OPEB trust. Again, you're paying the pay as you go over here, which from the general fund, you're writing checks to the insurance people and funding your 75% piece. Retirees are funding 25% of that. But on top of that, an annual contribution of $250,000. As I already mentioned, benefits paid as they're incurred. Your current funding level really is showing a very gradual funding. I mean, this is a big liability. But don't say you're just funding 250. We don't look at it that way. If your pay as you go is 2 million, we say you're funding 2.250 million, right? So you're funding a big piece. And so usually what most communities are doing with that extra is you're looking at your budget and you're saying, what can we afford? And that's generally how many communities are looking at this this way to approach this OPEB liability. So what's the long-term strategy? Similar to, I'm the 26-year-old trying to fund for my future retirement, build the assets now, they accumulate over time. You can invest in riskier assets than a general fund would allow you to. So you've got some potential for some nice returns, right? And you're going to build up that asset base to someday be able to use those assets to pay that pay-go piece, right? Those retiree benefits that you need to fund. Another part of your long-term strategy in place right now, and I shouldn't have put strategy here because it's not really part of a funding policy to get to a funded status. It's a funding policy to get us to the best discount rate we can use under GASB. Right? When many communities hired us to do this work, it at first was, oh gosh, GASB says we have to comply with GASB 7475. We need an actuary. What's an actuary? That we got very popular after OPEB, much more popular than after pensions. And so they hired us to first do that. First, tell us what we need to do. How do we do this? What do we disclose? What do our financial statements look like? Another 7 pages, by the way. And that's why we got hired. A result of that became, oh my gosh, look at what is on this balance sheet right now. We need to start managing it. What can we do? And that conversation came after we're in disclosure world, and that's all we were thinking about. But then it became a bigger conversation on, how are we going to tackle this now? So future funding to get to that best discount rate. Worcester Regional Retirement, I slightly promise, I'm not going to 100% guarantee because statute might change on that. Currently is expected to be fully funded by 2036. And that, just for pension terminology and even OPEB, does not mean you're going to pay Worcester Regional zero after that. It means the liability that you've incurred all this past stuff that accumulated over many, many years that you're paying the mortgage on, that piece of the appropriation goes away. 100% funded means you're no longer amortizing, you no longer have a mortgage, but you still have electricity to pay. And I'm making an analogy to, there's a normal cost. There's administrative expenses that need to be paid to keep Worcester Regional running. You will still get an invoice, I promise you, for that, right? And a normal cost is, if I have a brand new person who has no past, there's no liability. If I started a brand new program today with one person, no liability, no mortgage. Gonna work for 40 years. I'm gonna chunk off 1/40th of his benefit and pay that every year. That's the normal cost. That's what you will pay for every person that is currently working and every future person you will hire. All right, so Worcester Regional, I just want to, sometimes people get that confused that it's like, oh, fully funded. Thank goodness I don't have to write a check to them anymore. That's not really the case. The normal cost, however, is much smaller than this unfunded liability. Okay, so you'll still be
Any
happy.
guess at what, I think it's 11.7 we do right now, is the increase every year. Any guess as to what it would go down to once 2036 gets here, if it is fully funded?
Generally speaking, the normal costs and expenses are gonna go up about 3.5% a year. Worcester Regional does do this thing called, we call it the actuarial method of appropriation. Worcester Regional as a total system goes up about 10% a year, grand total. Everything goes up 10% a year. But because they do an actuarial method, different communities get assessed a little bit differently depending on their actual demographics. So if school districts tend to fare a little better because they don't have any group fours, and group fours are the public safety, police and fire, their benefits are more valuable than general employees. And that's because they can retire earlier at the same benefit rate as, I call it, the desk people, you know, the general employees and the teachers. Teachers are not in Worcester Regional, by the way, they're in their own system in Mass Teachers Retirement. So you're funding that. You're not funding teachers on Worcester Regional, by the way, but you are funding teachers here in OPEB. I need to add that to my slide. That is a very large distinction as well, that you have another pretty significant group of people who are in the OPEB liability. So that's definitely locally owned, that liability. So what will happen in our model is we're gonna see 250, 250, 250, all the way up to 2036. And in 2037, about $7.5 million. We projected that number. You're not probably seeing 7.5 million on that piece today because it goes up every year, right? So in as many years out as that is, I can't do the math right off the top of my head because I got a camera on me, but you know, in 2037, we're projecting it to be $7 million.
And then Kathy had asked the last meeting that did the analysis that we got in the report assume that at that point, the money that we would be paying, the money that we had been paying to Worcester Regional, which is less, we would then redirect that money towards making even bigger payments towards OPEB.
The catch-up payment we've been making to the pension system would be redirected, exactly, I'm just repeating what you said,
Yeah.
to OPEB, to then start truly trying to get that to be fully funded, right?
And it doesn't take a lot of years to, and again, just to clarify, there's kind of two things happening. The first is we're trying to get you the best discount rate to calculate these liabilities. The higher the discount rate, the lower the liability. So we want that discount rate to be as large as it can be. And large as it can be is go back to your investments. What is their outlook in your portfolio for long-term rate of return? We have 6.75 is the assumption, I believe, right? You don't want to be using the bond rates that are there. That's, you know, if you have to borrow, you got to borrow at bond rates, right? What would happen if you had zero assets and zero future contributions going in? You're discounting at the bond rate, which is like in the three. I honestly can't remember where we are up to. They change every week, so you know we track those and we use those on the day of disclosure. So that's project number one, is to get you the best discount rate, and that's what we're doing. The $7.5 million is coming in. We'll keep it there as long as it's needed, and then we can kind of cut it off and say, you only needed the 7.5 only for 10 years. You got to the best discount rate we can get you. We're done over there. I'm doing this because another possibility is a true funding policy that if you want to become 100% funded at some point in time, it can be the 250, 250, 250, 7.5, 7.5. Or maybe you don't want to direct the whole Worcester Regional release. Maybe 75% of it, right? You might want to hold some of it for something else. But once once we put that in the model, we might need to extend, the whole number of years you would contribute that 7.5 to get to fully funded. It could be 40 years. It could, I don't know what it is because I don't know, we haven't done it. And that's sort of the other thing is, and we'll get there. Talk about what it is you want in terms of, a future funded policy. Remember, you have control. Pensions, no, I don't ask this question of our pension clients. You have to be fully funded by 2040. The only question I can ask is like, do you want to do it earlier? And Worcester Regional has said, yes, we want to try to stay at 2026, right? That gives them 4-year buffer from what the statute says. So the question for them is not, what would you like to be at 2040? It's you will be 100% funded at that day. On OPEB, that might not be the same answer because you have control over that. And you,
So there's no law, no penny law that says you got to do that on the OPEB side, or also on the pension side. So is the reason you want the high discount rate to get the lower present value because of the pension side, because that's a lower number that you have to fund? Is that why you're saying? Don't really care?
No,
I'm saying it's on the balance sheet.
that's
but-
discount, that's discount rate for balance sheet purposes. All but one, I believe, of the 104 retirement systems are using that long-term rate of return because they'll never run out of money under the way the statute reads, right? The statute says you have to be fully funded. Well, you won't run out of money if you're fully funded. You're going to keep paying benefits. You're going to keep putting in the normal costs. Everything's going to look beautiful. And you get to use the long-term rate of return as your discount rate. Think about the OPEB program that has never opened an OPEB trust. They have no money. They're out of money. So if you're out of money to fund benefits other than through your general fund, you should be discounting at what your general fund could get. And that's kind of the bond rates, right? The high quality municipal bond rate is what we use. So you got a community that has zero set aside and zero thought. They haven't even opened a trust. We don't even have to ask the question. You don't have a trust. You have no money. Your bond rate, all bond, we call them. Then you have a client over here who might be 100% funded and they're still going to fund a little bit, maybe. We're going to say you're all long-term rate of return. Then there's everyone in the middle, which is why we do those calculations at the back of the report to prove that you don't run out of money. Or if you do run out of money, that's okay, but you just don't get to discount. Once you run out of money, you have to discount all those future payments at the bond rate.
Once the trust fund balance reaches zero, then you're
Exactly.
cash out of pocket.
And we say, you've got $1 million and you put in this and you took out that and you had some interest. There's a new balance. We do that like for like 109 years, I believe, is protection, because the last dollar paid out of the system is like in 2,109. You know what I mean? It's the last 22-year-old when he dies at 100, when all of him is dead at 115 is literally what it is. We show the table out to $1 because some auditors get, you didn't do your crossover fully. And like, yeah, it is. There's a one there. There's $1 left to be discounted in 100 years or whatever. So we're showing everything. It's very transparent on how we it's called the crossover calculation. That is like the point of that is truly discounting and truly your balance sheet concept stuff. On the other hand, the policy drives that balance sheet, right? The funding policy that you might establish that you want to be 100% funded. 100% funded means there's going to be a zero on your balance sheet. So you all have to decide how important that is to get to drive that balance down. I shouldn't say balance, but drive the unfunded down, right? So that your balance sheet will show that someday a zero or even a negative could show an asset as well. I have a client who has an asset. They have more assets.
It's a net zero. You got the asset, then you got the liability, and there's zero is what you're saying.
Correct. When they equal, like when you have enough
But still,
assets that
liability is still on balance sheet.
yeah. So that's kind of and we'll get there, I promise, on like the things that drive, over here. I'm pointing over here as a balance sheet situation, rating agency situation. And over here is truly the policies you can adopt to
So
start creating that schedule of funding.
I've got a couple of questions. And the first one is pension. So it's not OPEB, but we have, I think the number, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but our current unfunded pension obligation is on the order of 33 million. Does that sound right?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and we have, if I'm not mistaken, 10 years to make that up.
14 by law.
14 by law, 10 by.
10 by Worcester.
Well, yeah, we don't have a lot of sway there. And so you know, we recently floated the biggest bond. We're about to float the biggest set of bonds we've ever floated, $25 million. And yet we've got these other obligations, which frankly dwarf them. And for all intents and purposes, they're no different from a bond. It's a future set of
Absolutely
payments
right.
that
That's
we
right.
gotta pay. And so these are foundational to the budget. Now, we got to figure out how to pay these before we figure out how to pay first dollar of salary to a current worker. And one of the things I'd like to see is I'd like to see somewhere between a 5 to 10 year estimate of what we're going to have to pay to the Worcester retirement system, because my suspicion is that number is going to rise at a very healthy rate for the next 10 years, because I don't see how you get to $33 million.
11.7%. I mean, they told us that's what ours
Yeah.
is, right?
It wouldn't be every year, every other year, every year it actually can.
But that ought
Change a
to
little
be,
bit.
I'd like to see, see that schedule. So that, because that's foundational to the budget, I don't, and the same thing is true for OPEB. If we're putting in $250,000 above and beyond our what
Pay
it
as
costs
you
pay as you go, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say that you're getting to zero. So it ain't gonna be in my lifetime.
Not even close.
Not even close. Yeah.
Sorry, Al.
Yeah.
I don't care how long you live.
Yeah.
I wish you long lives.
Yeah, it may not be in my grandchildren's lifetime. And so I guess one question I have for you is, you want to get to that, the highest possible discount rate. I understand why that is. That's not necessarily 100% funded. Or because I'm assuming that the discount rate sort of asymptotes as you increase your percentage funding.
That's correct.
Yes.
And
You don't have to be 100% funded to get use of the long-term rate of return is kind of.
right,
what-
but there's kind of a point where you reach diminishing returns. What is that point?
We don't really know till we model it, and I think in our report, we stopped the 7.5 million.
Well,
At some
we're going to
point-
get to the 7.5 million in a
Right.
minute, because you're assuming that we don't have any other uses for $7.5 million when it comes
We're
off.
not, that is not our assumption.
Well, we
That
got
is,
4.5
that
years
is-
now. So
Right.
she's assuming that 4.5 gross to 7.5
You're right.
to 250.
But when we get to, the promised
Right.
land,
right, so the
2036.
7.5 was provided to us,
I
not,
understand.
You're right.
I'm not criticizing. I think you guys know your trade perfectly well, and you calculate with purity. But the idea that 2036, when we get to the promised land, and all of a sudden there is $7.5 million of budget capacity, that there aren't going to be other worthy uses of that money. The idea, the assumption that we are going to transition $7.5 million to cover our OPEB, I think that's a naive assumption.
But it's already in a trust fund.
Well, I
So
understand.
you think we'll take it out?
No, what I'm saying is right now we're paying, the proposal is that we will take $7.5 million of general fund revenue. This in 2036 to finish our obligation to fully fund the pension trust. That we're going to be able to divert that $7.5 million in 2037. $7.5 million, which is coming out of the general fund, and we're going to be able to divert that to OPEB. This river of money. We're going to be able to move from this channel to this channel. I mean, there are a lot of the community has a lot of other needs. And I think that's a naive assumption to assume that we're going to be able to divert that because,
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying, because right now we've already got 4.5, but that's 7.5 sitting in the trust fund invested, right? Then we
right.
put 250.
no, I'm talking about the pension money. And I'm talking about the $7.5 million of pension money that we're going to divert in 2036. I'm not worried too about 2036.
I don't think she's seen that. One of us is
No,
wrong
that-
here. I thought that we had projected that the OPEB trust fund that we fund every year with another 250. We think that trust fund will have $7.5 million in it and 2 notes. Okay, so. Okay, so.
Am I
all
right?
Then he's right. So what is the $7.5 million in 2036?
No, it's 2037 would be the first year we would have fully funded
The pension,
a pension.
right?
When you say we, you mean the Worcester retirement system.
Yeah, yes,
Worcester
the
County
Worcester
Retirement.
retirement system, and as a consequence. That $7.5 million represents the catch-up payments, correct me if I'm wrong. $7.5 million represents the catch-up payments that we've been making so that we could fully fund. Our obligation to our employees and our past employees. And at that point, that $7.5 million becomes available. For some other worthy purpose. Including maybe even letting taxpayers keep some of it. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But, and the assumption that we're going to take that $7.5 million and switch it over. Sam, am I getting this right? Switch it over to OPEB. I mean, there are a lot of other fingers that may want to dip into that stream of money. That's.
I
all I'm
agree
saying.
that we've got a choice at that point. We still have to pay the bill that Worcester sends to us, but it'll be a lot lower.
Yeah.
So then we'll have this difference that we're paying now in that to be able to do what we want to do with. But I just don't see where $7.5 million is coming from. Where is he getting the $7.5 million? And I know you said 7.5, but I thought it was what the 4.5 was going to grow to in OPEB. No, but it's not. You're saying no. So where is Al getting the
Seven and a half
$7.5
is a catch-up payment.
We'll have to go back to pensions now.
Well, do it quickly, because
It'll be fast. Pension payments are made up of 2 pieces. I already talked with the normal.
I get the
costs and
normal cost and I get
expenses.
the catch-up payment.
The catch-up payment is currently, what's your appropriation for Mr. Ish.
Three-ish.
3-ish total? Grand total?
Well, might be a little higher.
Let me think about this for a second.
That sounds right.
Okay, so
All
then,
right, so there's a piece of that,
So
probably a
7.5
couple
is the
hundred
total.
thousand, that's normal cost, and the rest
And
is,
so
you're
So I
calling
get
it
it.
the catch-up payment, we call it the
Okay,
amortization piece.
So is the total of the catch-up payments for the next 10 years, $7.5 million? Okay.
no,
Every year, you're gonna pay 3 million, 3.5, 4, 4.5, I'm making this up, I don't know the numbers. Up to maybe an $8 million appropriation to Worcester Regional in
In the last year.
the last year in
As
twenty
a catch-up payment.
thirty-six.
The town.
Total.
So that includes both the
That's-
normal and the catch-up.
All right, let me back up
Yes.
then. There is an amount of money measured in millions of dollars. That it represents the catch-up payment that we will be making in 2036.
I agree with you. So
Okay,
now
now
I
what I'm
agree with
saying.
you in concept. I just didn't know where the 7.5
Okay.
came from.
That's the 7.5 million. that
Okay, so
we
let's say it's
projected
7.5.
to be-
So I agree the town has many uses for that extra money that it could put
Okay.
someplace besides doing what we're talking about doing as far as.
So
now
I'll just
starting-
clarify one of your terminology, which you keep saying it's an assumption. It is not an assumption. It is our request to the town to provide us with what is your funding policy? And what we got in writing is $250 a year until Worcester Regional is fully funded. And at that time, we will like divert, I'm saying this verbatim, divert the you call the catch-up payment to OPEB, period. That's
Okay,
the funding policy.
again, I'm not
I actually
faulting.
said that earlier. It doesn't have to be 100%. We could take maybe 50% of it and see if we can get you to that discount rate. If you choose to divert 0, we might have to have another conversation that says, then what is your funding policy today? It might be different 10 years from now, and we'll understand that. We have to believe you when you tell us stuff. We do, right? So somebody at some point had a vote or had a discussion that that's what they wanted, and that's what you told us, so that's what we did.
So it'd be useful to be able to look at essentially that family of discount curves over time. Based on, various levels of OPEB catch-up payments.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the,
Yeah.
you could.
Because
see-
your short-term contributions are quite low.
Yes,
And I don't mean to minimize 250,000, like in my pocket, that's not quite low.
no, it's low.
Right, so.
Yeah, but if you
in
look at
OPEB
this, it's
speak-
low.
In
It's low
OPEB
relative to
speak,
the-
it's low. You're running out of money in a couple of those years, believe it or not. because we've got benefits to pay, right? So there's a little blip, there's a few blips that aren't gonna get you quite to that long-term rate of return, but as soon as you start funding in 7.5 million, it's pretty quick that you won't run out of money.
So.
Those can be modeled, and that's kind of what we'll get to is, you know, we have a community that we did a lot of this modeling on this very concept. They were the first ones to jump on this idea that when they're in Bristol County, when Bristol County would be fully funded, a new part of their, you know, appropriation would decrease dramatically. We did 50%, we did 85%. We tried all different models for them to look at. And they, I think, ended up selecting 50 for the very reasons you're talking about, which is there's some other things that we're probably going to want to do. It pensions have been, you know, especially the regional systems, they're not well funded. And we're not quite sure why, but there are many regional systems that are not the best funded in the Commonwealth. So there's big appropriations. They've increased by, I mean, I'm sure your budgets do not increase by, you said it was 11% that your appropriation.
Okay, can we get this straight? Because that's what you've told me, but you disagree. Is our check we write to Worcester every year going up 11.7%?
About, it does change.
Year after year, not every 2 years, year after year.
Yeah.
Right?
About.
Okay.
But it changes because we do new valuations. We're doing one right now that's going to set the
You're
2028.
doing that for Worcester is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So from that, they know what to assess.
Coincidentally,
us.
we are the actuaries for Worcester Regional Retirement System, so that's why I know.
So like for me, I'm just listening to this whole.
And you're going, my head is spinning,
No,
my
no,
eyes
the only,
rolling.
the only issue it affects is should we increase $250,000
What?
a year? And if so,
By how much?
yeah,
Okay, so can we
sure.
keep that in mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
That question is very important. So if you can, can we move forward just so we can
Yes,
get to this discussion in a little bit of a more structured way, and I think you'll be benefit from it. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on slide 7. There you are. Southborough, how do you compare to your peers that Brian provided to us that we could look up? Coincidentally, there's a report that PARAC puts out every 5 years on this information. It wasn't out when we prepared this last week. So we Googled, you know, financial statements for all these communities, and we found everything but Shrewsbury. Couldn't find anything on the town, so I deleted it. But here you are in your comparative analysis. Please don't take this as, you know, this, oh, wow, we got some
wait.
work to do. We got some work to do. Don't,
I'm
because
ignorant. Tell me what the funded ratio is.
it's the liability that you have, sorry, go the other way. Assets you have set aside as of a snapshot date,
Yeah.
which was June 30th of
All right,
25,
I get it now. Okay.
divided by the
So our
liability.
4.5 million is our numerator.
So we're second worst.
So you're basically 8%
But it's a
funded.
random.
All right, so,
selection.
no, don't, that's what I'm saying. Don't
No, Brian,
jump to
tell
that
me, tell me
conclusion
you
yet.
don't.
All right,
All right,
but no. it
there's
doesn't-
so many things that go into this that can make you better, or your number could be in this range if I tweaked a few things. Let me tell you what I can tweak. A plan provision. We don't want to offer this plan anymore. We'd rather offer this plan. We want to maybe change the 75-25 split to 60-40, something like that. We don't know what all of these are. We did not look that up. We didn't have time. We just needed funded ratios, right? What we were just talking about, the discount rate. I bet Grafton has a very low discount rate because they're so poorly funded, right? Their liabilities right off the bat are lower, are going to be higher. So their funded ratio much lower, right? So there's so many different things that go into this. You know, and I can tell you, Wayland has had a funding policy for years and years, because I've seen their RFPs for OPEB work that they'll talk about that they want 2 valuations. They want the accounting one over here, and they want a funding report with a policy and a different way of looking at things. All right. So that's probably why they're way over there. So
So the long and the short of it is that we're not going to be making a meaningful dent in OPEB till 2036 if we continue the
Unless
existing
they add
policy.
that 250.
And then unless we, if we keep with the existing policy, we won't go broke, but we won't,
right.
so
So
we're not making a meaningful dent.
right. I always like to put an analogy to a mortgage, right? We all have, most of us have a mortgage that we had a balance on day one and we made a payment. And we subtracted it from the balance and then the remaining balance got interest. And you keep doing that, right? So the ultimate day you get to hang up your mortgage thing. My dad did that. He nailed it on like the rafter in the basement when he paid off his mortgage. It was at zero. If you do not pay at least the interest on your mortgage, what do you think is going to happen to the balance?
Goes up?
It's going to go up and up and up. Liabilities, because of the nature of the time value of money, will never go down. They're always going to go up. Plus, you're going to have new people with new benefits earned, right? So if you don't at least pay the interest, I can guarantee you will run out of money, or the liability will just kind of keep, or the unfunded liability, sorry,
Yeah.
will keep going up and up and up. All right. In pension funding, when the numbers are so much larger in terms of the assets, you know, and what's there, when they're making these huge, I mean, Worcester Regional is, I think they hit 100 million in appropriation last year. That's the whole system, not you guys. Right. They had a bunch of years with what's called negative amortization. Right, because the appropriations are so big, but they could be even bigger if they truly on their calculated what the mortgage payment should have been, right? So they've been trying to control that, right? So there were years in which not even interest on the unfunded liability was being paid. So the unfunded liability was like, the chart was literally like a and then down.
So I've got one more set of questions.
All right.
Sorry. That relates to teachers. So the teachers' pensions fund is, I think it's 60% funded.
That sounds about right. It's about the same as the state.
About the same as we are. And assuming they are under the same mandate to the 2040 mandate, I don't know. You probably do. They're going to be looking for, you know, they're going to see their pension catch-up funds rise by roughly the same 10 or 11% that we're going to see if they've got to get to the same place. And, you know, while it comes out of their paychecks, I assume they're.
And the state.
Yeah.
The state funds the rest of it.
You know, I'm assuming they're going to come to us for some more.
State funds that one.
Yeah, the town does not fund it.
So the town doesn't
I
fund
should
it.
say
Okay,
directly,
all
right?
right.
So pay you off,
Something
you live here,
change.
you fund everybody through your state taxes. Yeah, the state funds the state system, of course, and the teachers.
All right.
So that is a big difference
That-
between.
that makes me
OPEB
feel
and
much
pensions. Yeah, you're not funding teachers' pensions.
We are funding their.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And you don't distinguish between teachers and others, by the way, like I just want to clarify that. The benefits on OPEB are the same. They're not the same on pensions. They have an option for. Because I think teachers tend to do a lot of moving around go to different districts or whatever. They have something called Retirement Plus that allows them a
They've got
little bit better. Yeah, maybe they have a better union that could go. Any more questions on the comparisons, but don't take it too much to heart. I think it's educational. But the coincidence was at 2:50 this afternoon, I got from the state actuary an email with the link to the report updated of all this today, literally saying like after I printed 10 copies. But anyways, mass.gov/PERAC, PERAC. You can go to that website and or Google the Massachusetts OPEB summary report. It's there. As of this afternoon.
I'm gonna ask two more questions, but I mean, the one takeaway I take on is that the numbers aren't, you know, gospel, but
Changes every day.
but
the funded
Sudbury and
status.
Wayland are clearly, they've done something from a policy standpoint that's different there.
They put more money in.
They
put more
That
money in,
also means
yeah.
their discount rate is probably higher,
Right.
so.
You're
they're-
close to the long-term rate of return, by the way. You're like your basis point TD amount from the top. Because we wanted to give you a good discount rate, so we twisted your arm to put all the rest of your money account. Just kidding. No, you are at a high discount rate, I think. 6.7. The one you used to
I
discount.
thought it was
the
6.54 or something.
Something like that. I was gonna say
Right,
657 or 654. Can't recall exactly.
So
Are these other two towns, the piggyback on Andrew's question, do you know, I know you can dig into this, do you know anything about those towns, if there are policies for what the town?
Yeah, I know a little bit about Sudbury. Sudbury several years ago had a huge savings from some, whether they left the GIC or they changed their provider. I think they either left the GIC or went to the GIC. I don't know which direction it was. And they had like an $8 million, windfall from their employee health insurance. They thought the most logical place to put the savings was in OPEB. They dumped $8 million in several years ago. And I think they have a funding policy, as in like when you fund actuarially, an actuarial contribution, that creates, a true trajectory to 100% funded. And I think Sudbury is on that. Wayland, I think, has been funding for a long time. You're not going to see a lot of communities in this range. You're going to see a ton of zero. If you go to that link I was saying, you'll see a ton of zeros. There are communities that are doing nothing. School districts are catching up. They were slow to the game. And it's probably because they've got to, get this approved from two towns that might not be funding at all. So they're probably not going to get any money for that. But this is not unusual. I asked the state actuary today, I'm like, thank you very much. Can I have your backup data? And he sent it to me. I have all the stuff now. But at 2:49, I didn't have any time to look at anything. I bet in total, the Commonwealth is not 20% funded. I would say it's probably closer to 12. If anything, in grand total, everybody add everything up. I do not think the funded ratio is much beyond, like I said, the 12, 15-ish.
Oh, it's still below that though. But you also compare apples to apples, it's hard to do. What if these towns were doing 50%?
That's what I'm saying. Plan provisions could be different. So if you want plan provision change in the, renegotiated the health cost or changed some plans and people started electing higher deductible plans, right? Maybe your 8 would go to 10 or 12, right off the bat, because you're like, that denominator is moving all over the place all the time too. Not just what you're putting in, but the denominator is your plan of benefits, your cost sharing, the health insurance trend, people living and dying. That's all at the bottom. The numerator is your assets. What are your returns on those assets? And what are you funding? So that's sort of the moving target. Everything's moving, right? So there's your comparison of local towns. All right. So what drives the cost? We've already, I think, killed this horse to death. Your healthcare premium increases is probably the biggest component. So ironically, we only do this full valuation every other year. So in the interim year, it's called a roll forward. We roll forward all of your liabilities as if everything was how we expected it perfectly, which is not the case, but that's what we do, and GASB allows that. But you give us new assets, right? So in the roll forward year, you're probably going to see less volatility. You're not going to see a gain or a loss on experience. You're not going to see any kind of assumption changes, generally speaking, on the demographic stuff. So, but when we do a full valuation and get new healthcare premiums, this is when, we kind of keep our fingers crossed and say, we hope we're close. Generally, the biggest driver of a loss or a gain is that the healthcare premiums did not increase as we expected. And that's usually the number one reason right off the bat. Remembering though that if the health premiums increase a lot, some of that gets put onto your retirees as well, right? So that's a gain. Right?
We're about to get to what I think is $1 million question, so don't get impatient, because this is where I really want to spend some time. I think Al does too, because there's something we fundamentally don't understand about the municipal cost per person of retiring health insurance. Don't have to do it right this minute, but we do want to get to that before this is over with, and also talk about this bill that's sitting in the House that would let towns decouple from 32B, end up with some type of HRA instead, where individuals pick what they want as far as the Medigap supplement and they get reimbursed. Because the cost in the private sector per person seems to be a lot less than the per capita cost in a group Medigap plan, and that's what Mr. Hamilton and I do not understand.
Just to give you some context, might have guessed I'm over 65 and I have Medicare. And I have a Medicare HMO. It's got a pretty high deductible and a high total out of pocket. It's like $9,000. And my cost is zero.
So he's part
And
C.
that's Blue Cross Blue Shield Medicare Advantage.
Right.
And I've been very happy with it. It worked well for me, and I've had to use it lately. So, yeah, the current thing that we're paying, because our employees are paying for Medicare, and we're paying for Medicare, and so I think that's something that has baffled me.
So that's why this bill, it's been introduced by the legislature from Wellesley. Sam went to a meeting and sent me what they're doing, but they're letting people starting to try to decouple to do this. So I'm traditional Medicare, Al's Part C. I pay $200 a month for my Medigap plan that backs up my Medicare, right? Our per capita cost in our current retiree plan is about $500 per person per month. So it just makes no sense to me. You got a big group. Why wouldn't it be less? You can spread the risk. So it's just something fundamentally that I don't understand about the cost of group Medigap insurance. So I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about Medicare eligible people, that group, which is the OK group. I'm not talking about the people that retire before 65 and stay on the active plan because they don't qualify for Medicare income. Medicare qualified people. So there's just something that I really don't understand as to why our cost is what it is when I can go get mine for $200 a month, and I'm happy with mine. Al's happy with his Part C. I'm happy with my traditional Medicare. I don't get it.
You get insurance through Maya?
No.
Who is it? Or so are you like the town only?
You should
Goes
be
out
talking to
for
Brian.
yours?
We formed a group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we loosely have formed with the regional schools in town of Oakbrook.
But for the
have
health
to
insurance
defer.
retirees, we were part of a group of a lot of towns, right?
Oh,
We're now
yes,
getting out of that
retirees.
because the premium was gonna shoot up 17%
Mm.
in 1 year at no. So everybody's now trying to get out of that plan and do something different. So I don't know.
I'm gonna ask you to defer your question to another group because we do not get involved with the negotiations or your procurement and all of that stuff. It's probably a consultant or,
Mm.
and there's negotiations and then union probably comes into. all
Well, I think
that.
what we should
So-
do is get this person that is in Sam's email, that apparently understands us, to come talk to us. It's H1399 is the bill. It's sitting in the house right now.
Okay, so healthcare premiums are things that drive, primary driver of what drives the cost. Your plan design will, that's which plans you might choose, and your cost sharing arrangement for your retirees. When we talk about retirees, by the way, there are two groups of retirees, and you kind of alluded to that. There are the retirees who are not yet 65, right? You can't force them on Medicare when they're not eligible for Medicare, so they stay on the town's plans. Right, they're gonna stay, if they were in an HMO as an active employee, they're likely just gonna fill out a different form and just stay on the same plan, right? And then there's so our calculations always assume that person's there until they turn 65. They turn 65, they're covered by Medicare, the premiums drop, right? So the cost will drop too. Ironically, though, in OPEB, the more expensive liability component is the post-65 piece, and that's because the longevity of the benefit, the time, right? Somebody who retires at 62, you've only got 3 years, 62, 3 to 4 years of payments under the HMO type plan. But once they turn 65 and you're expecting, if you live till 99, you've got a lot of years of health insurance that we are projecting. So that component, that's usually the driver of the cost, is going to be your post 65. Got a lot of retirees in the active plans that can drive costs up as well, because you've got a group of retirees who are probably 60 to 65, right? Older, higher health costs, driving up the cost of everybody. So that's an implicit subsidy that is valued in our GASB calculations. So that's another thing to consider. In the old days, there was a section of chapter 32B. It was kind of like a you should or you could, but you didn't have to. Somebody who was eligible for Medicare, you didn't have to force them off of their HMO. They were happily, maybe I would have been happy too, staying on just a plan you're familiar with. And I'm 72 years old and I'm not changing now. But then when healthcare reform came in, it kind of put all that out. The statute now says, if you're eligible, you must change to a Medicare, enroll in Medicare, get on Medicare, and get a sub plan. There are some people who never were eligible for Medicare, so they have to stay on the HMO. There are some ways to get around that now. You can buy Med Part A, basically, and the town probably is better off reimbursing. You only have a couple people like that, so they're big drivers of cost because they're staying on those expensive plans. But some communities have a lot of those people that just didn't move on to Medicare. But yeah, so on that, the effort that you might want to put forward on looking at the plans offered, the plan design, it's really the post 65 in OPEB that is driving most of the liability. Participation in demographics. If I'm a retiree and I could have 5 retirees in a year who all of them elect, and they all elect a spouse, right? That's like, those are actuarial losses. We don't expect everybody to elect, and we don't expect everybody to elect and cover a spouse, right? Or in the following year, you could have 5 retirees who don't elect anything. So all of that stuff comes into the liability calculation on who do we think will elect as well. Usually, depending on your plan design and cost sharing, that's how we set participation rates. Most 50-50 communities, we'd kind of say 75%, but when those bump up, right, more people are going to elect. They're gonna anti-select against you, because the benefit is better. What can you do? Policy levers that are available, obviously, adjust the annual funding level, which is that 250,000. How you would do that, we'll get there. I think we talked a little the other day about, using one-time funding like free cash. Some communities will say 5% of free cash every year. That's our policy. We'll go into OPEB. And that becomes a standard, deposit. Or they might say 250,000 plus, some other thing. And it can be things that fluctuate and that you're not quite sure what they actually will be. But you can provide that to us and we can model it somehow. Modify the plan design is something that will change. Now, these are the things that change the unfunded liability, and then adjust the timing of the trust usage. So putting in money, the extra money, if you put it in like last day of the fiscal year, you're not making use of your, the possibility of earning, but you're also maybe deflecting on the possibility of losing. Putting in your contributions sooner than later is a good practice. And then there'll be the time when are we going to start drawing from this trust? Like, you're not just setting that aside so you can look at a trust balance. You want to use it someday, right? And when will that day happen? So we have to part of your.
Brian, what do we do in terms of when during the fiscal year the 250 is deposited into that?
It's always at the beginning of the year.
Okay,
See?
July
Good.
1st. Okay.
Very good. Very good. So yeah, so that gets the whole year's, and except for 2022. Every year has been tremendous returns in most of these funds. So there's been in our report, we have all the annual returns, and it's been like in the past 5 or 6 years, it's been like one negative. The rest have been double digits in some cases, like very good returns. So. All right, so I'm moving on to slide 10. So the path forward. And I kind of alluded to some of these things, what are your objectives and priorities? Right? And I can list some of the possibilities. Is it the best discount rate? Is it to become 80% funded by a certain day? Is it to become 100% funded by a certain day? Is it to continue paying $250? I mean, my sort of flippant way is like, there's so many choices because there's no law. There's no statute that tells you what you need to do. It's really about what you think, you know, is the right thing, I guess. So discount rate, I would say, is a very good thing. You want to maximize your discount rate. You'd like to get your liabilities lower that way. That's in a way a little bit kind of an easy thing. There's also the matter of rating agencies, right? Your AAA, you're not taking your disclosures report and handing it to the auditor and doing nothing. You're doing something, you're thinking about it, you're talking about possible policies, right? OPEB, rating agencies do look at pension obligations and OPEB obligations and comment about them. And could potentially, like, they're gonna ask for our reports, and they're gonna look at the assumptions, and they're gonna say, we think this assumption is not conservative enough, we think your liability isn't 50 million, we think it's 70 million. They will review it and opine on it. I know an actuary who works at Standard & Poor's, this is what he does. Right, so it does impact the agency, and you just said you're going out for a very large bond rating, bond, so that's important, right? To make sure these liabilities don't get away from you in terms of that stuff. So, it's your intention is what is it you want? Where do you want to land? Where do you want to be? Once we have an understanding of those objectives and priorities, we can help you define, like, here's a policy that would get you here, or here's a funding policy or a model that might get you there. And we can, what if you want to change the cost sharing? Well, here's the what ifs. Here's the what if you did it. We can change all those things and show you. And sometimes a lever that you pull isn't that impactful. So you say, well, let's not even talk about this anymore. Maybe it's the cost sharing going from 75-25 to 70-30. That might not do much, or get you, or maybe a combination of some of these things might get you to where you want to. But that's what we could do. We can model, it's like a one pager per scenario that we create, and we say, okay, this is what they wanted to do, this is where they want to get to, and they wanted by 2045 to be 100% funded. We can tell you, what do you need to contribute every year to get there, or every year with a 3.5% increase, because budgets generally will go up by some number like that, or as a percentage of your payroll. This is a benefit, and some people look at things as a percentage of payroll. Pensions is more popular to do that because it's a salary related pension benefit. OPEB, not so much, but as I mentioned, you can do a lot of different things. But I think foremost is you need to sort of come up with your priorities or your objectives so we can help you. Once we know that, we can say, well, we can give, we don't want to give you 12 scenarios, you'll be too much, but we can narrow down what kind of things. And, you might say, our budget constraint is that we don't want any policy that's going to put us on the up like at a $2 million next year's contribution to the OPEB trust. That's too much. Here's our constraint, keep us within this range, and we can do those things.
Okay. Anyone have any more questions or?
I put a little chart at the end here, fun chart, to show you where Worcester Regional and any other pension system that you might be interested in. Worcester, I should have identified the dot. They're at 70%, so they're purple. They're 2036, and they're probably,
I think they're
they
just
could
under
be to the
60.
left of that red dot on the 60% 2036 intersection.
Was that red?
They might be,
Yeah.
they
that's
might be
why.
that. Yeah. Oh, no color. It's this dot right here
The second dot from the left
on the
on the
2036
2036
line. Yeah.
line.
But this kind of gives you an idea of like the kind of things we look at on pension that has a robust funding policy, right? Funded status, everyone's trying to get to 100%. Their goal is to get to a decent long-term rate of return assumption. And when will they be funded by? 2033 is the median. The median, by the way, is the number that lands in the middle. If you have 11 items, there's 5 on the left, 5 on the right. That 6th one is
Also got a steep mountain to climb.
Our auditor told us there's 3 that are kind of bad, including us, Essex, us and.
Middlesex. No,
Middlesex.
yeah,
And
Middlesex.
that he thinks they're just gonna change the law and just push it out because those 3 are super big plans.
Well, they're not the one that's hanging out here on the left here, the lone dot. I can
Who's
tell you that.
Who's that?
That's a community in the middle of the state that has had some troubles, Springfield.
You had Worcester, Middlesex and Essex. That's a significant fraction.
Well, as I was
of the
mentioning before,
Commonwealth
right,
Population.
the regional or county systems have been traditionally, I mean, they're trying to. It's kind of a tough gig. Worcester Regional has 101 units. Like you guys have, if you were your own unit, right, you're one of them. And if you had a housing authority, that would be 2. But there's 104 of Bluewald or 100. I think it's 101. They just actually I got an email today. They just got a new unit and got a new unit to share the costs.
Oh,
So there, yay! But they also bring in their own liabilities
Oh,
too.
yeah, I mean, we're gonna have regional dispatch. That's gonna be the new unit.
I think that might be the one.
Yeah.
With Rutland.
Yeah.
Is it-
no.
There's another one. Okay,
Okay.
these people came from Rutland and they're
All right.
branching
Yeah.
off. I've heard
Regional
this-
dispatch, Southborough, Grafton, and Westboro.
And who will own it? Like, is it gonna be, or they're just gonna all,
It's its own
you
district.
have some employees that will. Yes, move out.
Yeah, so
to
we're,
their
yeah,
own-
so the service is gonna migrate from the 3 communities to the
To that
regional.
unit. Savings, 3 people out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna hire people that much, maybe not.
Out of one hand and into another.
Things that, also like, do you have a light department in Southborough?
No.
No, that can drive costs. I think I'd asked you that already.
Yeah.
Because those are group 4 employees as well. Public safety, obviously, I already mentioned that, their value of benefits is higher than a general employee. Even though, if I work, if you have 2 people, group 1 and a 4, making the same pay, work the same number of years. And retired at 55, both people, the benefit of one obviously would be a lot more. Public safety employee gets more, but his value is bigger, is you get paid over a longer period of time.
All right, well, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. This has been very helpful.
Appreciate your time.
No problem. I'm gonna go check out H1399. Fun time with all the news going on.
Please do.
tonight.
Okay. So I'm gonna move one item up on the agenda, which is consent agenda, item
I don't know what next.
D, the appointment of the Youth and Family Services Business Administrator positions. That's because Sarah Castle has been waiting here patiently, so that she doesn't have to sit through the wastewater committee updates.
It's a priority.
Well, now is an option to do it if she wants to.
Yeah.
We've been flushed.
All right, so, anyone have any questions for Sarah about, we have a memo in the packet here about the position you're looking to fill. Anyone have any questions?
You got
All right, so you're ready to just answer any questions that they
I
came up?
am, I don't have much more to add other than it's already written in the memo,
All
and I
right.
appreciate
So-
that.
I move that we approve the appointment of the Youth and Family Services Business Administrator position.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Those opposed? All right.
I always give a context, which is you didn't ask me for permission to post. You couldn't ask me to approve something after the fact. But nothing personal.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Stay for a little.
All right. So, thank you, Sarah. We're on.
Thanks.
Yes, you're on.
I apologize, I only have 9 slides instead of 12, but you should be here for an hour. So before we start, do we have any other committee members online? We got three out of 4 for forming in the house. Call meeting to order.
That's seven member.
7 now.
Don't.
So if you could,
Don't have
that would be
quorum.
one,
Yeah,
Bob
one.
Moss would be another.
So We have one more online.
Oh, okay.
So you have, is Claire online?
Claire's online.
Okay.
Then we have a quorum.
Okay, so I will call the wastewater study committee meeting to order at 7:56 p.m. Quorum. Okay, this is basically a replay of the update we did back in November, I guess, which we reported, so we're pretty close here. What the plan is I'll talk a little bit about the charge, what we've done to date, what we plan to do over the next months here, and finally, what we asked the select board to do. Cut to the chase, we want the same kind of support that we talked about last time in terms of working with other communities, for example. Our charter expires June 30th. So in deference to Mr. Sunset over here, end of the road, Mr. Hamilton, otherwise known as the Prince of Darkness.
Well, thank you. That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me.
We would ask for an extension of charge to 6/30/27. And probably need to go beyond that, but at least that gets us another year. So that will be an ask. And then we're headed toward, we hope, special town meeting in the fall. And we're scrambling to get a district improvement financing plan for approval there, which is going to be a real push, but if we don't try hard, we're never going to make it. So right there. So that's sort of where we're headed in terms of the ask. All right.
Is that a zoning?
No, it's a majority vote. And I'll talk about what that means.
So it doesn't need to go to the planning.
No, it's not.
I think it would be very worthwhile to keep the planning board informed of that.
Yeah.
And get their support on that.
And other committees as well, yeah.
Correct.
So
Correct.
There's a lot of communication that need to be done. Wide range of people. Okay, we're talking about that, but technically not zoning majority of them.
So this is like a betterment?
Not quite. I'll talk about it. in a
Okay,
moment.
good.
It's actually complicated. I went to the meeting, and it's complicated.
Okay, all right. I don't mean to, I'll let you go. And
I was trying to cut to the chase. Again, what we have done to replay for folks who have not maybe watching, haven't seen the earlier presentation. We've estimated a capacity requirement for a Route 9 wastewater system, at least 300,000 gallons a day and up to 500,000 gallons. So Route 9 for commercial development in a reasonable range along that pathway. And we've determined that it's technically feasible to build a wastewater plant and a ground discharge area. We've got to do ground discharge instead of surface water discharge. The rivers, for example, this EPA is no longer permitting surface water discharge. So it's essentially a leach field. And that will be at least probably 15, 20 acres, something like that. Plant takes 5 acres. So, and they don't have to be contiguous, although you got to pump between them if they're not contiguous. But technically, you can do it. And the numbers that we're talking about looks total ballpark, $40–50 million. Littleton built a plant recently that's about size we're talking about. They were around $50 million. And the trigger for them is they had a site that IBM had on 495 that IBM abandoned. The developer bought it and is putting in a major complex there, commercial complex, and has agreed to foot over half the cost of the system. So that was the thing that got them over the hump. In terms of,
they sit in the town still have to pay 50 million after.
No, town has to pay half of that.
Okay.
They have other ways to do it back too. So anyway, but that's the constraint that we have is that we figured out how it can be done. We've talked about phasing it into the western segment, central segment, eastern segment to make it easier. No real plan for that yet. But the challenge is you got to pay for it. You got to pay for it at the front end, and betterment fees and district improvement financing do front end funding really effectively. And so we're looking at a variety of sources, grants, loans, state has programs, not big programs like that. Dartmouth did one of these not too long ago. They wound up funding like 12 different sources of market basket full of funding sources. And we're looking at all those things. Some of those things are gone to ARPA. They would some as well. So again, real challenge to get it paid for on the front end. If it gets built, then there's, I think, a reasonable chance that it'll generate enough tax revenue to make it workable as we go over the years, but can't get that money off the ground initially. So again, we are continuing to look at financing operations. And we also developed a first pass of a DIF plan, district financing plan, with some AI assisted artificial intelligence access. Pretty amazing in terms of this. Alan Balniak does that day job, and he and Claire have put some things together to create, given all the other plans that there are like 15 or so of these in the state now. And if you look at it, there's about at least half to 2/3 right based on the state template requirements for it. And so you can put all those into the AI chat GPT and crank, and it turns out it's a pretty good looking plan draft. The real holes are we don't have a site, we don't have a specific system design, or you don't have a financing plan. There's a big holes. But in fact, the number of pages that you have to produce, it's a small part of the plan, but it's about 98% of the work. That's, as usual, bureaucracy triumphs here. So again, we're working on filling in those holes. I want to talk a bit about the DIF financing. As I said, there are about 15 or so towns, cities and towns have done that so far successfully. And what you do is you got to write up a plan. Plan can be a time span up to 30 years. Most of them are 30 years. And they it needs a majority approval of town meeting. And so what it does is it defines a zone, an area, DIF area, that presumably can take
Not zone.
Not zone, sorry.
Not zone.
Okay.
It's an area.
My zoning board,
But not,
not
so.
no zones. Where development, where this infrastructure might benefit property owners. And it has to be less than 45% of the town's land area, which we're easy. The current plan is, if we've done some sketching on this, a long mountain line with a sort of a bulge at the west end and at the east end where there's more potential for development. So it's the way a dumbbell here. Big ends and narrow middle of the mountain line. And the initial look is about 1,600 acres, about 600 property parcels, and about 800 million current assessed value. So what you do is you establish a baseline assessed value as of January 1st of a given year. And if we can get this approved in 2026, by December 31st, snapshot starts at January 1, 26. So the value of making that snapshot as early as possible, baseline. And then annually thereafter, you do the assessment on those parcels as of January 1, and the increase in tax revenue from those parcels presumably can be attributed to the infrastructure. That's actually probably not actually true, but at least that's what the DIF model says. And so what you then do is you allocate, the town has the option to allocate some portion of that incremental tax revenue over that base value to pay for the system. And those ranges are as low as 10%. Some towns do, some towns have 100% of that. I think a reasonable number is around the 50% range, but most people do. We recognize the fact that some growth is going to come independent of the infrastructure that you pay for it. So that's not a bad sort of median number, I think. But again, that's part of the plan that we have to write to come up with an initial number. And you can modify the DIF area from time to time. It's back to town meeting, so you want to get it as close as possible to the initial pass here. And so again, the real bottom line is that this is not an additional tax. This is a reallocation of incremental tax revenue that the infrastructure will allow to occur along this area. And so it's a significant communication process, as Becky mentioned. It's a concept that is not familiar to most people. And we're going to have to work hard. One of the things that we're working on is a plan to communicate that as we go through the next 6 months or so here. So the work plan for the next months in the package, we had the timeline, remember we had a 5-year timeline. We've extended that by a year because we did not get awarded our FY26 one-stop plan. So it's going to be longer for funding. Turns out that
Are you planning on reapplying?
not for this probably at this point, because the one-stop thing turns out that they need a project that has a site defined and design defined and some portion of the design plans built. So they want to get shovels in the ground on these, not something that's 5 years out. So we really didn't have a chance of that, unfortunately. They didn't realize that.
And was that like feedback that the evaluators?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we had a good debriefing session. They were very candid with us. And they said, we're just too early. And so unfortunately, we had consultants who presumably were experts in the process and did not tell us that. So that was disappointing. But anyway, so we're looking for other funding sources, and there may be some pieces. I saw a note from Karen today that she got some input. She's been going to the one-stop debriefing or one-stop answer sessions that are in the building. She got some feedback that maybe there's an opening there. I don't know the details, but I'm going to look at that again, sir, for one-stop design funding. Another option for us is to look at town meeting, special town meeting fall to get some design funding to start the ball moving in design, which I know is going to be tough, but I guess that's something to consider. So again, continue to push on the DIF plan, push to get something in front of town meeting in the fall here to hopefully get that benchmark as early as possible in terms of baseline assessment. Continue to pursue financing options. And again, there are a variety of grants. There's some zero interest loans for this kind of stuff out there. That's still a loan that you got to pay back. So not free monies. And the chance that the feds and the state are going to come through with money for this kind of stuff is infinitesimal. So it'd be wonderful, but you don't know.
What about the water fund?
And there's a state revolving fund in Wisconsin, so the SRF, and that's a good program, but you got to pay it back.
0% you have to pay it back?
I don't know if that's zero, but it's pretty low interest.
It is, I think it'd be 2%. There are some treatment plants, depending on how advanced it is, where there is loan forgiveness as part of it as well. It's limited to construction, so it's not design. So the town would need to front the design money for all that, all the costs, but prior to construction would need to be accounted for. They would need to have demonstration that, there's full appropriation for the construction amount.
But you'd also need to get some work done to even get a ballpark number to know what I need to ask for.
We've got to get a site, and we've got to do hydrology on the site to know what the discharge area looks like, cost, and so forth. And that goes back, I said, when you plant this site. So, yep. So it's a layered process there, and we are working hard to narrow down the sites. Nothing firm yet.
Okay.
So again, continue to look for money. Continued communication with neighbors. We had a recent meeting with Westboro, and they have a plant that's about 7 million gallons a day, which is pretty good size. And they serve all of Shrewsbury and some of Hopkinton and all of Westboro. And they currently believe they don't need any extra capacity at this point. But we're talking with them about the potential for a regional grant to study the regional plant here. And so I will say that the economic development people seem to be more interested in this than the DPW people in sewer board. So they got a lot of different places.
Is that the Veolia operated?
Yes, it's right near Tractor Supply, Ocean State.
Ocean State job.
Yeah.
Aren't they expanding that plant?
Well, they updated it some, but they really can't expand too much physically there. It's not a huge.
There's some
site.
stories in the community.
Yeah, I remember reading this recently.
Yeah.
Article back in March about it.
So they don't believe they need lots of extra capacity.
Even with all the new projects they've approved?
Well, they had a big project that was, I can't remember how many 100,000 gallons a day that fell through. And so that gave them some headroom that they weren't expecting.
And again, they're not going to be allowed to get an increase in what they discharge to the river from the plant. So even if they expand the plant, they would need to find a place to discharge that, which is above what they're currently permitted to discharge.
Right. And so we also continuing to stay in touch with Marlboro. They've got 2 plants, I think.
Yes.
And their surface water discharge as well. Yes. And so they at some point may need some capacity, but again, nothing that I would say is near term there, but you want to keep talking. And we're talking with, as we can, with people who've done this recently and get the input we can for what to do, what not to do. Sadly, the big input we got from Milton was a 20-year project. And they were struggling until this IBM thing came along and opened the door for them to exit on the floor. Great news.
That's certainly the lesson I took away from Littleton is the stars have to be aligned just right.
Yeah.
And then you can make it happen.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, we have an area of town which is potentially going to get developed, for our benefit. And that may be the right alignment of stars, but it's not going to be easy.
Absolutely. And one of the key things that I'm interested in this district improvement financing thing is that there's great value in establishing that assessed baseline value as early and as low as possible. And so it takes a long time to get this done. And you can actually select a date in that DIF process for when you want to start it. I can't remember the term for it. But you can get it approved and say we want to start it as of effectively, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, whatever project begins at that point. But I think there's huge value in having the paperwork done. And if we try for it here and we don't make it by fall special town meeting, we're ready to go next year. So I think it's worth. But who knows, as Al suggests, maybe Barrett will have something here and want to be ready for it. Unlikely, but worth the effort. So, and so again, the ask for the select board is help with communication with our related communities, extend our charge, and work with us as we can on the fall special town meeting in terms of the DIF approval and for some funding there and we'll develop this. So that's my 10 minutes. Yeah.
So do you feel you need to get the site before you ask for DIF?
Yes. Well, you need to, I think you need to know that. Technically, I'm not so sure, but I think technically you do it. That part of it, you describe where you put it.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge identifying a definitive site.
Yeah.
All town meeting time.
That's right.
Absolutely. Yeah. But again, if things are going on in the Dell property over there that I don't follow, but maybe somebody comes up with something there, opens it up. But my goal is to be ready for that and not expect that it's going to happen, but be as ready as you can for it and see what happens.
So saying you said that West Farm doesn't think they need more capacity,
Right.
but what about the converse? They don't have capacity for us, right? I know we've asked this before, but we don't fit with, we can't, besides what the EMC agreement allows already. They have no more room for us.
They have not been willing.
No, from past work that I've done with previous firms, again, Westboro, Shrewsbury have the majority of that capacity, and they don't want to give any of that capacity up because they're not going to be allowed to increase what can be discharged to the river. So that which they have, they want.
Very
Yeah,
valuable.
the towns guard that asset preciously because it meters their growth. And we groveled several times down to the MWRA and we got the cold shoulder. And we're gonna have to build something new if we're gonna have something.
Well, the MWRA issue is there is actually some capacity at Deer Island. But getting wastewater to Deer Island is a problem. And MWRA is under EPA restrictions in terms of what they call a combined system overflow. If it didn't rain, they got capacity, we could get everything there. Rainstorms, the sewer systems and stormwater systems for most of the towns to the east of us are combined. So the rainwater goes into the sewer system, overflows into the Mystic River, the Charles River, and Boston Harbor River, wherever. And MWRA is under huge restrictions to limit that. They're headed towards spending $1.5 billion, cut that down at this point. And so they're not willing to pay any extra capacity.
So we could just get rid of the rain.
That's right.
No,
That creates a problem. So anyway, that's the high level view. Happy to answer any questions. Brian Whale, this would ask for a to charge. Which is next time.
Okay, that's something that I ask and I support. Doesn't make sense to say we made some progress, we should keep going.
Well, not only that, I went to the meetings last week and I forgot the individuals on this committee are really talented. It is a full of, the right kind of people. So it's such a great committee as far as who's on it to be able to, if it's been put off, they would be able to pull it off. So definitely should extend the charge.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we extend the charge for the wastewater committee to 6/30/27.
Second? Favor? Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain.
Might it be noted that Mr. Sunset voted to extend the committee.
I've heard the Prince of Darkness.
I don't know if Bridget can hear us as well as normally, so that vote was 4-0-1. Yeah.
I think it's probably better.
So are we done?
Anyone have any questions? Well, we do deserve to, you know, it's appropriate for us to thank you for the time you're investing to this, which is a long-term project, and I know that both of you have served on.
Al started, it's his fault.
Yeah.
All right. But no, I mean, thank you for your work on
As
this.
Kathy said, it's a great committee, very,
Yeah.
very capable people. Everybody is pulling their weight, which is great.
Yep.
So, it's always entertaining meetings.
But so the one takeaway here, if, okay, we extended the charge, and then if the ask is to bring forward a diff proposal in the fall town meeting, that's a much bigger. Because you also got the Miri project in the
Yeah, so
pipeline
we
near term.
talked about that. I'm not sure the two go together. We may have to.
No, they don't really.
Yeah.
Go.
Well,
Both,
I mean, it's-
but it's a chicken and egg problem, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you just, people are gonna ask, well, where do you want, it seems the natural zone would be the properties along Route 9.
Yeah,
So
so
where along Route 9 would you cite the silver? That's the big,
but the biggest challenge is the discharge, because you need a lot more property.
You need 20 acres for that.
20 acres.
And I continue to pester my friends at MassDOT about it. I continue to inform me about the space, you know, 495 ones. So we'll keep pestering them, but I think that Al described it, that's a slow no.
Yeah.
Is there any precedent for that? Like,
Yeah, they got real estate people who actually look at property they have to try to generate revenue off of it.
All right. Well, I know, for example, you know, like, but MCI Cedar Junction, right,
Yeah,
is in the middle of Route 128, right?
that's not generating revenue.
Yeah, that's right.
That's costly.
That's right, but
Yeah, that's a great site.
yeah.
Yeah. Buying security there with cars waiting by 8 miles an hour. So is that it? I learn our rules.
I think that's it.
I'll move to adjourn. Roll call to it is. Mark Shea,
I just turn this on.
I,
Cyrus, I, Claire,
Aye.
thumbs up.
I'm not gonna read.
Yes.
Oh, just-
Claire,
Open her microphone.
Claire, vote.
Yep,
Vote to-
I voted to adjourn.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, folks.
And
All
Claire.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, under reports, I'm gonna turn over the chair's report to Captain Marguerite.
Okay, this is quick. The Southborough Food Pantry has had a volunteer who's been a coordinator there for 25 years. In Marjorie Colville, and last Sunday there was a gathering for her. She had retired from food pantry, and the select board presented her with a proclamation thanking her. And also I have to say that Rachel, new admin, did a great job of putting this together. Very articulate, very professional. And we thanked Marjorie and her family for all of the years of service that she's put in as food.
So you have anything under number reports?
I've got one thing, so Friday, the town starts the open enrollment for healthcare plans for fiscal year 27. They've got the whole month of May. This is all employees, teachers, everybody. Shout out to Christine Bristle as far as the job she has done trying to explain the new plan to all the employees. She has been, I mean, today, I believe she went to roll call at 7, roll call at 3 for the police department, to try to catch most of the police officers. She's just done a yeoman's job trying to do it. She is really good. She understands the stuff. There is a healthcare fair next Tuesday from 1 to 4 at the Senior Center. Margaret Pilgrim's gonna be here. They will be here to answer specific questions if you've got as far as your specific circumstances. Excuse me?
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, sorry. So what, the sixth, right? Yeah, May sixth. What did I say, Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it's May sixth. 1 to 4. And then they've gotten Harvard to put together a app that you can go use and look at the cost of both plans to see how it affects you. So she just has done a great job. So we're really hopeful that starting Friday, that the message has gotten out. People have really looked at this and that they're going to hopefully pick the high deductible health plan, which will save the town almost $1 million year over year if everyone who's currently in the HMO were to pick that choice instead of the HMO they have right now.
All right, great. Mark?
Just a couple of quick things. First of all, the items listed on the agenda, the Town of Southborough Scholarship Committee is seeking applicants for their various scholarships as they do every year. And I think that's one of the things the board really enjoys doing every year is presenting those scholarship and recognizing recognizing the recipients at one of your meetings I believe in June. The deadline is coming up May 7th at 4 p.m. And so applications are returned to it's the Southborough Building Department this year. Same person, different location. Katie Berry is helping to continue to coordinate that for the committee. She's really enjoyed that. And even though she's no longer in select board office, she's going to continue doing that from the building department. So applications will go to the building department due by Thursday, May 7th by 4 p.m.
Mark, I talked to Lisa a few minutes ago, who's chair of the committee, and she says whether they've got the money to fund what they want to is questionable. So we encourage anybody listening to this to please, if you are so inclined to write a check to help make sure we've got enough money to fund those scholarships.
Right. I know it gets touch and go every year as to whether they have enough to actually give out what they want to give out.
Well, people used to pay their real estate tax bill, in payment for by mail, not electronic stuff. So you had a checkoff box. Nobody does it anymore. So it is tough to come up with money to fund these.
One other piece regarding regional dispatch, the rec met today. It was actually a meeting of all of the committees, the board of directors, finance committee, and the ops committee had a separate meeting. Purpose of the meeting today was to start to get ready for a conversation as to issuing a bond for the remainder of the money needed in order to open the rec. We're looking to start construction on July 1st. We have the majority, I think, of the construction money. We have applied for the next round of funding from the development grant from State 911. We should know, sometime late May, early June as to what, we will receive from that. But the board of directors wants to make sure that once we start construction, we can continue to move, and we are not going to be bound to waiting for the different tranches coming from the grant program. This is the same thing that Foxborough had done when they developed, and the principal and interest from any bond that they take out was paid through the development funds from the state. So we're trying to set all of that up. Today, we entered into agreements with bond counsel and a financial advisor to help set this all up for us. Any bond amount will have to be recommended by the finance committee. Brian sits on the finance committee along with the other finance directors from the participating communities. Would need to be recommended to the board of directors. The board of directors would need to approve that, and then it would need to come to each of the member select boards, and each of the member select boards would need to approve that. If anyone decides to vote against that, then the borrowing doesn't happen. So there'll be more information coming on this. I just wanted to give you a heads up that that is something that'll be coming, sometime in the next couple of meetings.
So this is a relatively short-term credit facility, effectively.
Yes.
And I kept asking, what happens if there's not enough money to build? And I kept getting no answer.
Yeah.
No, I know. So
But this gives us certainty that we can, once we start, we can finish
when
know-
do you expect to start
July 1st.
building July 1st? 6 months, and you're
Construction
supposed to
start.
be in January 1st?
No, we expect to be in probably around October of 27.
Okay, is it pushed out now? Or am I just off a year
No, it's been October probably for
of 27?
of 27. Yeah. Yeah. There's a good amount of work to do. So,
This is something you don't turn on until you know it works.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I appreciate Brian's assistance. Again, the two firms that we brought on today, the bond counsel as well as the financial advisor, we both had history with them. And everything. So I've been very pleased, with the work. So I think that we'll be well served in preparing for any bond issuance and bringing the information to the board that you'll need.
Well, this was already May. By the time you get all this done, one would think you have already heard from the state as far as the grant that's in process right now, right? And if that one gets approved, isn't that enough money to build between that and the previous one?
We'll have to take a look at the, it's a construction, but it's the infrastructure too,
Okay.
because there's also, fiber needs, or, connectivity needs. We're actually probably in better shape than say Grafton. Grafton's got a lot more connectivity issues that, and while they may not be perfect when the switch gets flipped, we want to make sure that they're in good shape. So.
All right. So on the consent agenda, I'm gonna hold the March 31st minutes. Are there any other holds to be?
I'm holding those, so. No
Okay,
problem. And then hold E. The warrant.
hold the the warrant for the election.
Yep.
Okay, I move that the board approve consent agenda items B, C, F, and G.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, right, so, the change I have on the March 31st minutes on lines 82 and 92, the last name Harris should be Carter. So I change that. So I move that we approve the.
Well, I've got more than that one.
Oh, you got more minutes? It was on the 31st?
Yeah.
Okay,
And Laura Kaufman, she does have 2 sets of double letters, but not 3. It's not 3 N's at the end of her name. So line 20, get rid of one of the N's, and line 43, get rid of an N. But more importantly, line 58, it's DPW, not DWP. Okay, so, line 129. So at the end of it, that's not exactly right what it says, who informed her that they expect the new Southborough location will be open in the fourth quarter of 27 if no further traffic studies are required by the Mass DOT. That's a very important caveat. So it looks like they're going to be required. That's it for that one.
okay. Any other changes to the March 31st minutes? I move that we approve the March 31st minutes as amended.
Second.
Favor? Post? Okay, Kathy, did you have edits to the April 7th minutes?
Okay, so Bridget, line 21. I'm gonna read where it starts on 20. He reported that he has prepared 5 audits for the town, and for the 5th consecutive year the town received. This is what you should say instead of saying a clean audit. You should say received an unqualified opinion on the town financial statements. So again, an unqualified opinion on the town financial statements. Then when you get to line 26, employees that were not hired but not included in the prior census, we need the word prior there. Line 31, funded by 2040 as is required. And he recommended the town consider creating a pension stabilization fund.
Any other edits? I move that the board approve the April 7 minutes as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, so then Kathy, you had a hold to the,
Yeah, because I, just like Beth Miller, I'm confused, and Jim, I think, is on vacation. So, the article at annual town meeting to approve the $25 million was one article. Yeah, we talked about the two components, sidewalks and roads. So it's being broken down into two votes, which I'm fine with, but I just want to make sure that is correct.
Yes,
Okay.
bond counsel and Brian can back me up
Yeah,
on that.
so
We
do
had a
it that way?
conversation with bond counsel, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so it's gonna be 4 debt exclusions, not 3. Okay.
I've had a number of people ask why it's broken in two. Is there like a elevator pitch to answer their questions?
I think again, back me up on this, but I think the rationale was the sidewalk money.
Yep.
Are for defined projects which are gonna be done assumably inside of a year, right? So those things are going to be all set. The road money is a 5-year plan, and these are the intended roads that will be done. I think this board has had conversations as to cost of oil, therefore the cost of asphalt, what we actually can do, how much, so I think there's this fluctuation and some variables in that. So one of them is more defined than the other, which I think is why, does that hit it, Brian? Okay.
Still doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but whatever.
Are there,
they're just different projects. They're sufficiently different.
Whatever.
but are there any sidewalks going down on roads that may be done later than the sidewalks? No, right?
No.
Sidewalks are all different. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I move that the board approve the warrant for the 2026 annual town election.
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you, Mark, for explaining.
Yes.
So the final item on our agenda is 2 of the financial policies, the senior tax workout policy and the grants management policy. Al was the point person for the senior tax workout and Mark is the grants management. So Al, do you want to begin?
Yeah, you have a quick copy. There is one minor edit. It's under the policy where it says, it's about the 3rd paragraph down. It says if the number of available positions is less than the number of qualified income eligible applicants, so that should be greater rather than less.
Which page is it on again?
So on the first page,
Yeah.
3rd paragraph, it says, it's the second highlighted line, it says if the number of available positions is less than the number of qualified income eligible, and it should be greater rather than less.
Okay.
I've just made that change. Basically, what I've done here pretty much is whenever we've tried to sort of put in a dollar parameter, I've tried to reference, I've tried to take out the dollars and put in sort of a generalized reference. It does mean that this board would now define the number of available positions, and we approve this, I'll make a motion to that effect. And
Approve each year?
pardon?
Approve each year?
I think what you can change it anytime you want, I think. Just says you approve the number of available positions. I think that number stays that way until decide to change it. But other than that, yeah, and I did incorporate Andrew Pfaff's suggestions that we eliminate the age 18 constraint, qualified 16-year-old who wants to help work off their grandmother's debts. There's no particular reason why they shouldn't. And I've shared earlier copies of this with the cast of characters.
Okay, so out in here, does it have the number of slots?
It does not.
No.
No.
Okay, so
What if we approve this policy, I will immediately make a motion probably for 40 slots.
and that will
Currently,
stick until we do override that
at some future date.
So what was the current number?
The current number was 30.
Okay.
So
Do we think 40 is a good number as far as picking up Everybody that
Yeah,
would qualify.
30 has been, the number we've used for a long time, and my suggestion, for example, has been that advisory's been looking for help for a long time, and, you might be able to find somebody one or two people who would be willing to help advisory under this type of a program. And I think, the library potentially, I guess, has not used this program a lot, or at least that's what I've been told. I could be wrong.
Actually, we had a senior work-off person who got the Peggy Tuttle Award at town meeting last year, so that it was very successful in that sense. We
So-
can use them.
Again, let's, my proposal is that we increase that. The other sort of big change is that there's not a separate application if you qualify for any of the income-based programs, which, by the way, includes a free dumpster. Then you would qualify for this program. And in the past, my understanding is that the number of income eligible people is significantly less than the number of available positions, and so they are then made available to the general public.
I'm okay with these changes.
Yeah.
I think it looks great.
Thank you.
All right, then I'll move that we accept the senior tax workout program, a policy.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? All right, thank you.
Then
Is this
Mr.
brand new or are we replacing the policy?
It's brand,
Updated.
It's
yeah,
updated.
Council
Yeah,
on Aging had.
codified and updated.
Yeah.
So Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we set the number of available positions under the senior tax workout policy at 40.
Second.
All in favor? Yep. Marguerite.
Okay, this is the grants management policy. I worked on with Carla. You probably helped me out with this. There's a couple of typos in here, my fault. On page 2, section B, the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom, school committee needs to be capital S, capital C. On the top, grants opportunity assessment. Well in advance of the grant application's due date, the department grant administrator will assess the opportunity in consultation with the town administrator and/or with the school superintendent. Okay, so it's not both. Could be both, but it's probably gonna be one. And then on the next page, the second line down from the top, the grant administrator will also send copies of the documents to the town accountants. And second line from the bottom on that page, there's just a misspelling of administrator is all. Administrator with and that's it. And I think basically Carla has fabulously volunteered to keep an Excel spreadsheet with all the grant data coming in and when the grant is completed. And the other main thing that I learned from working with her on this is that when it says at the bottom of this for the grant awards for Q3 fiscal year 26, it says $428,597.36. That's the grant awards, but it's not really a concrete number, because some of these grants will use less money than has been awarded and it will be turned back. So it's not a hard number. It's in a gray area, as Brian says. And I think that's important that people be aware of that when they're assessing what's coming in for grants. Some may get turned back.
So Marguerite, is this a new policy or is this an updated policy?
That's a Carla question.
The new one.
It's what?
New. This is new.
Totally, we've never had this before.
Yeah.
This is recommended by the DLS and their review.
All right, so Marguerite, give us a big picture here. What have we accomplished here?
I think what it really means is that Carla is going to be tracking most of the grants that are applied for in the town. So, and it's been haphazard to date. you get a check coming in, and all of a sudden you realize there was a grant application that was done. What Carla would like to do, and I think she'll be terrific at it, is to keep track of when people are applying. Whether the grant was awarded or not, possibly a couple of lines about why it was or it wasn't, which is also useful data. And then to track the amount that's coming in, and what she's doing now anyway. And then at the end, to have the grant is closed out, here's the final amount of money that was involved. So it's basically a fantastic Excel spreadsheet, which is going to give anyone who's applying for a grant or has applied for a grant or wants to an idea of what the town record has been with the applications and the results, which it currently does not really exist. And so it's a good thing.
So when we talked about this at the last meeting, one of the concerns I think of many of us is that we don't always know what we're getting into with the grant.
Yeah.
So what have we done to try to improve that situation so that we understand what happens at the end of the grant as far as what we have basically signed on for?
Okay, so that is a good question because it has to do with what will the collateral expenses be for the grant? A lot of times the library got hotspots, right? And the state had funded that. And then at the end of the period we're using the hotspots, it turns out the state says, okay, no more funding, but the library patrons really wanted to use them. So that was an additional expense in the library budget. So I think the line that we put in here is on B, section B on the second page, grant application and award acceptance. Okay. And Carla, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it would be the grant administrator will disclose to the best of their knowledge if accepting the grant will incur future ongoing expenses should such grant expire or be discontinued. And then using the bullet points above, which Carla has created these programmatic and financial sections on, basically boxes to tick on what the project cost will be, what they may involve in the future, whether the grant will stop and everything will go back to zip, or whether it will be an ongoing expense, so that there will be exactly that question answered. I mean, to the best of anyone's knowledge, is this going to involve more spending in the future, or is it going to be a one shot?
Okay, so the way that we are going to try to answer the question and control the answer is that last underlined sentence, right? Using the bullet points above, if it increases FTEs, impacts benefits, is a capital item of $10,000 or more, then it must go before the select board or school committee for acceptance, right? So to me, that's the control, Carla.
Yep.
As far as.
But I think A is just as important, if not more important than B, because a lot of times we go into some of these grants without a plan. We're just going to apply for money and let's see if we get it, we'll figure it out. And, that I think drives Carla crazy. Because we're not quite sure how we're going to do what we're going to do, but we'll figure it out because we don't want to send the money back. Right. So I think using that kind of analysis up front is going to help us in the second half of that in making a lot of those assessments. And I know that the board talked about this before, that, when the thing that we've purchased or the service we received, when that grant funding runs out, is this something we're going to want to continue? And if it is, here's what it's going to mean to do that, and have some idea about that, before we go down that road.
So it's a good discussion with some other people.
Yeah.
Before the grant.
Yeah.
Was one of your Scrivener's errors to make before the board or school committee, was it the select board?
Yeah, I caught that. Should say it's select. Yeah.
Where are we?
It's right underlined sentence.
In the near the end.
You found the loophole, Tim.
I know that there's a lot of Scrivener's errors you mentioned. I don't know if that was one of them.
We can clean that up.
Yes. Any eyes on, anyway, I think it's.
Yes.
Gonna
I think it addresses the B section addresses that, where it says, if it housing maintenance costs, increases FTEs, impacts benefits, or is a capital item, it will go before the board or school committee in the second.
Is it
section.
the board or the select board? That was my
You could
question.
put select board,
Okay.
yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep. No,
So hopefully this will prevent a grant that we receive and have to come up with the project. After the fact, I will say no more.
Well, if it's a capital item, too, would go on the capital plan, like we had talked about before, the, not that Teresa spoke about it. Those are actually on the capital plan as like an identified, something that will need to be replaced. That was something when we talked together, and I didn't think to that next step, but
Very true, very
the
well.
capital
Good
plan
point.
is pretty
But I'm
expensive.
still more concerned about the FTEs as far as, getting a grant for a person going, okay, now what do we do? We're gonna grant, because that's happened several times. And we did think about that with Andrew Coutinho's request. That's why we said no to that one. Because Northborough had just gone through the same thing and had a problem. So good job, Carla. Good job.
Yeah, really.
I move that we approve the grants management financial policy.
Second.
All those in favor?
You're always the second person.
I think that's it for the
I know
next.
what we're doing it, so.
I move to be adjourned.
Second.
All those in favor?
Oh, my
Have a
God.
comment?
Question.
We just talked about that.
So I was just going to observe that it's not just when a grant funds